Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Astrology with Ethan podcast. Today, I am joined with my very good friend and fellow astrologer, Tan Astrology. And we are joined for another episode of the podcast to discuss a sector of the houses, which we refer to as the angular triads. So the houses in astrology represent different areas of life, and the particular area of life we're focusing in on today is relationships, looking at the seventh, the eighth, and the sixth houses in astrology and what they mean. So, welcome, Tan, to the podcast. Introduce yourself for those who have not met you yet.
Hello, Ethan, and good day, everyone. So, I'm very happy to be here today with another podcast with Ethan. I am Tan Kanjanasoon, and I am an astrologer. I have a YouTube channel called Tan Astrology, so you can find out more. I mean, if you want to get more information, more knowledge about astrology, relationships. I specialize in relationship astrology, so synastry and composite charts, but all kinds of astrology and human design and gene keys as well. So you can check out my YouTube channel. Yeah, so I think that's gonna be a little introduction of myself. I am sort of now doing astrology a little bit more part-time than before. Before I was doing it more full-time. Now I'm kind of transitioning and into other career paths, but astrology will always be in my heart and
Such as
soul.
art, you are an incredible
Yes,
artist and you are
yes,
creating
thank
lots of
you.
line drawings, am I correct? And selling
Yes,
them
yes, that is true.
online.
Yeah, that is true.
And they're
Yeah,
very
and if you are
magical.
interested, yeah. Yes, they are. Yeah, they're like a little bit inspired from fairies, mythology, folklore, a little bit of a dark, whimsical kind of feeling. So if you like that kind of art, you can also find me on Instagram at House of the Wild Witch.
Yes. And is that primarily your art account now?
Yes, that's my art
Yeah.
account.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I love following your art. You have a beautiful eye and very multi-talented. That's your
Thank
Gemini
you.
rising. You're able to do lots of things.
Yes, yes.
Well, fantastic. I always like to start these episodes by starting off with the angle. So the angle sets the tone for the triad. The triad today is relationships. The angle is the seventh house. So, Tan, do you want to do the honors of opening up what the seventh house is all about?
Yes, I'm very excited to do that. And actually, before we start, I was like thinking, how do I want to approach this conversation with Ethan today because of this word relationship? And actually, I think there's a really interesting, um, the etymology of the word is quite interesting when we think about why are the sixth and seventh and eighth houses about relationships?
Hmm.
Because the word, relationship is coming from which means back, and
Hmm.
ferre, so referre. Ferre means to carry. So it's that which carries the thing back to another. So when we think about why these houses are about relationships, it's really because of the way that another person changes you as they refer back to you. And then, of course, this leads right into the seventh house because of the way that it relates to the ascendant and the first house, because the first house is the house of the self. And we have talked about that in one of our podcasts. And the seventh house is exactly opposite to that. So it does have a relationship with the self. So there's a way in which the other, the seventh house, and also six, and also eight, which we'll talk about later,
Hmm.
refers back to you. So the other is
Hmm.
always in a relationship to you, and a relationship is always about the other and yourself. So the relationship is never just about the other person. It's always coming back to yourself. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but that's kind of the idea.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
to add to that, whatever your seventh house sign or planets are, will always be opposing what's in your first house. And
Yes,
that
exactly.
angle of the opposition represents a push and a pull, right? Self, other.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
think it's through those tensions that, as you're saying, Tan, we are molded into more of who we are. We gain more
Yeah.
consciousness and we integrate what is not apparent about ourselves right away, what another person brings in or teaches us or exemplifies about what already lives deep within. So I
Exactly.
just want to emphasize as well that we're talking opposition here to begin with your ascendant, yourself, and seventh house, the people who make up your life.
Yeah. And of course, the seventh house, sometimes you would also consider the descendant to be the cusp of the seventh house, which is the descendant is opposite to the ascendant. And
Mhm.
so you will hear a lot that, the descendant and also the seventh house will represent they will say, oh, it's your spouse, it's the type of people you're attracted to. This is basic, astrology, what you'll find out there. It's some of the
Mhm.
qualities or the traits that you are drawn to. So, but there's a reason for that. And I think that one of the main reasons, like what Ethan was saying, is the opposition effect. So there's always there's just two sides to everything. You can say like a yin and a yang, right? Like you have two sides of the same coin, the heads and the tail, the yin and the yang. And the ascendant is going to be the head. Oh, well, let's go with the head. Or the
Mhm.
yin. No, let's go with the yang. The ascendant is more the yang and the head.
Mhm.
And the descendant is always going to be, the yin or the tail. Because we can't exist without the other. It just doesn't, that's not how, life, the world works. There's always two sides to everything, good and bad, happy and sad. And that's the ascendant and descendant. So when the opposition factor comes in, there's an opposite proton neutrons, there's an opposite to
Mhm.
everything, like the magnets, right? So therefore, the thing about the descendant or the seventh house is that whatever sign rules that house, whatever planets you have there, they are actually a part of you, but they are a little bit more like parts of you that maybe you suppressed when you were younger. And the ascendant, the first house, is what your family probably said. This is how you have to be in society. This is how you should be seen in the world. This will help you to move forward in life. And all those other things of the seventh house and the planets and the signs, just kind of like, suppress that because it won't really get you far in society. So, therefore, we're
Mhm.
drawn to people who have traits of our seventh house, or maybe they have traits of the planet that is in the seventh house or the sign, the traits of the sign, because we can sense that a part of ourselves will become whole and complete. They will help us. Not, they might not be consciously helping us, but we can sense it by knowing them. They will bring that part of ourselves that we have suppressed, and then we'll become whole. We'll get the yang to our yin, the yin to our yang, the tail to our head. And that's part of soul growth and evolution.
Mm. Incredibly well said. And I really like how you brought up this subject of suppression because it's not obvious when we think of the seventh house, right?
Mm-hmm.
We read the seventh house is partners, agreements, one-to-one relationships, marriage, right? Client work as well can live in the seventh house. But we never hear about what we repress and how it lives in others, and how the people that we're meeting are often challenging us to integrate that which we've put away. I called on our first episode the first house the eyes of the birth chart. And if it's looking
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, it's looking right at that seventh house. And because they're at a 180-degree angle apart, I think you're very right in bringing up that what's in the seventh house can feel distant. It can feel far away. It can feel inaccessible, right? And that's often why, people have these cravings around relationships, that insatiable need to be in relationship
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
somebody out there has something that I have not yet realized in myself, right? And so then we end up merging with these kinds of people, meeting with these kinds of people, sometimes even signing agreements or starting businesses with these kinds of people. And that's all of a sudden when the alchemy of the seventh house kicks in. It's like when we have that bond, that's finally where those chemicals are able to react and something new is born of the self, right? So
Mm.
we are not ever completed by somebody else, but as you alluded to, we are evolved by our
Mm-hmm.
relationships. We are formed in them. What did Carl Jung say, right? Two people coming together is like two different chemical substances having a reaction, and something entirely new is created. And I want to say that that first house, seventh house axis is what's entirely new that's being created.
Yeah, I love that. And this just emphasizes so much how attractive attracted and attractive this seventh house is to us, because you mentioned it's exactly 180 degrees from each other. So if you imagine like the birth chart being like a round table, right? Like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round
Mhm.
Table. And then that seventh house is the person that's sitting right opposite to you. So it's actually the person we see directly. We're not really looking at who's beside us. We're looking at the person there. That's the most attractive person. And that's what the seventh
Mhm.
house is. Like you said, it's a spark because it's so, I know you, I see you, I recognize you. And it's really
Mhm.
this point of recognition as well. And the what I really like about that is also like it, like the person or the people that you meet that, have traits of your seventh house, they help you to recognize yourself. They help you to see yourself better. So it's almost like this quote, like, I am because you are. So by you being you, I know me.
Mm, right. And I love that image of being at the round table and being right across from one another. Because in theater, sometimes, they call that physical positioning, that could be
Mm.
enemies, right? Going into war with each
Yes.
other. That's what that could
Yes, yes.
symbolize. Or it could symbolize, people who are being distant, who love each other very much, who are kissing and saying goodbye to one another. And there's a deep longing to be with one another. So it can be either or, right? And what I'm really liking that we're bringing out here is the tension in the opposites. What you might feel is your opposite, is your no zone, is the I'm not going to be that, is the seventh house. And
Yeah,
that you have to face off with constantly throughout life to really find out who you are, right? Which is
yeah,
partially what you're conscious about and a
yeah,
lot which you're unconscious about.
yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, rivals, enemies, competitors definitely all fall into the seventh house, as well as the people that we marry or the people that we choose to be in business partnerships with. How interesting is that?
Mm,
It's the house of this like polarity, but I think it
mhm,
also brings into emphasis the idea of equality and like mutual recognition is what exists
mhm,
in the seventh house. Because we're going to talk about the sixth house and the eighth house, which are the two houses that have nothing to do with equality, really. It's like completely different energy. But in the seventh house, there is that like, because it's the theory behind it is to balance, right? The yin and the yang, the head and the tail. So ultimately, it's like the relationship that we have with people that have come into our seventh house in one way or another, or they have traits of our seventh house, there's a way that we can work with it and have an equal type of relationship. So that's why contracts are part of this as well, because we make sure that everything is even and equal between the parties.
mhm, mhm. And I think that that can be a difficult balance to strike in the seventh house, honestly. Like maybe equality is something that we are reaching for or that we're aspiring towards. But anyone who's ever, had a significant other or had that best friend knows that sometimes you two are just going to see things completely different ways. And part of the equality is letting them be right and letting yourself be right and having that ability to kind of give each person their experience. Because the first house, it's like just our subjective experience of the world, right? But in the seventh house, we really encounter, oh, somebody else is reading this differently. Somebody else is seeing me differently. We're coming from different planes here. So how do we have a dialogue? How do we have an agreement, right, that does keep us on balanced terms so that things don't,
Mm.
get out of control and totally imbalanced?
Yeah, because like we mentioned at the beginning, it's that push and pull point. And I think like one of the main um paths or ways that we can really make the seventh house become a balancing point, a point of peace and equality, is really to own up to, you know, the stuff that we've suppressed. So there's a book, I think it's a book about shadow work, basically. And the entire book is based on the seventh house. There are
Oh.
activities, and actually, I can't remember the name of the author, but I can look it up and maybe let you know later, and you can share it in the description of your
Hmm.
podcast or something.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I did. go through this book. I thought it was really fascinating. It's called Shadow Work, and it's about shadow work, and they're exercises based on your seventh house. And they ask you to go back into your childhood and think about how your parents were, what got suppressed, and stuff like that, and then see like how is the seventh house a trigger point for those things that you suppress, because the things that you're most triggered by are really the things that you really own inside of yourself. You do have it, you just don't want to own up to it because of certain conditionings in
Mm.
society. So yeah, it's a fascinating book.
Right, right. And, the seventh house being that angle that is anchoring this triad, it squares two other angles. So it has the opposition to the first house, to the self, but it's also squaring the family, right? Like squaring the fourth house and squaring the 10th house, which is profession and what you're known
Hmm.
for. So,
Hmm.
those tension points in relationships are really important to establishing what we value on the inside, how we build our family, our base. That's the fourth house. And then the 10th house, how we carry ourselves in the world, what we want, how we go out there. It's all through relationships with ourselves, with others, that those other angles are being formed. So it's really incumbent upon us thus to, engage fully in our relationships so that we can see our shadows revealed. What I also
Hmm.
want to say on the seventh house is it is the point in the sky, because I always like bringing in a little bit of astronomy. It marks the point in the sky where the sun sets, where all the planets set. So there's also this theme in the seventh house. Sunset can be very romantic, can be a time where we're winding down with loved ones and watching a beautiful sunset, right? So there is something about that time of day that sort of brings
Yeah.
us together. But what it also signifies is that the sun, which is about the self, is setting. So,
Hmm.
we might also have
Mm.
to decenter ourselves significantly in the seventh house to be fair and be objective with other people, right? We have
Hmm.
to sometimes
Hmm.
compromise as well and not always get our way, right? So there's also this theme of negotiation that has to happen here within the self. Like maybe I have to die to an older part of myself. I have to let that sun set, and I have to kind of live in this in between liminal space of,
Hmm.
I'm in this relationship and it's changing me. I'm not sure who I'm becoming, but I'm going to stay with it because that sun has to set. That old self has to die in some way.
Wow, I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah. And
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
just I think the moon rejoices here if I'm correct in the traditional astrology. Did I get
In
that
the
correct?
third, no, in the third house, the
Oh,
moon
not the seventh
rejoices.
either, no? Is
No,
there a
no.
planet that is rejoicing here?
No, what's
Oh,
actually
there isn't.
interesting is that in the Thema Mundi, which is the birth chart of the world, Cancer is the ascendant and Capricorn is the descendant or the seventh house.
Oh,
And the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn, and Saturn exalts in Libra. And what is Libra? It's balancing, right? It's
that is true.
justice and
Yeah.
fairness. Saturn is as far outside of the personal as you can get. So similarly, in the seventh house, I think we're also encountering this place where we have to decenter at least what we know about ourselves, to open ourselves
Hmm.
up to what other people can teach us. And with that comes a
Mm.
lot of,
Mm.
feeling lost. Say you do have a luminary in the seventh house, like the moon or the sun, and, your core identity could kind of always be in negotiationship with, or in negotiation, sorry, with your relationships, with your environment, right? So I think whatever in the seventh house we're sort of negotiating on with other people, we're working through, we're having
Mhm.
conversations, we're making compromises around. Um, and I think that can be a definite challenge to this house is, remembering to always have our anchoring in the opposite. The first house being that strong sense of self. Okay, like, who am I coming home to at the end of the day? So that I don't compromise myself too much in the seventh house so I don't make too many negotiations and then forget why I even entered in this relationship. So it's all about holding that balance, that
Yeah.
beautiful sunset where you're not overpowering somebody else with your light and they're not overpowering you with their darkness or their yin and your yang. It's like you're finding that balance. That's why sunset's so beautiful and romantic to look at, is it's this gorgeous painting of light that we can
Yeah.
look at, that we can enjoy, right? It's pink and orange and yellow. No one light is overpowering another, right? They're
Ooh,
sitting, they're sitting
very
in
beautiful.
equanimity. Sometimes you even see the
Mm.
moon at sunset. So,
Mm.
right? So you're
Wow.
you're 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 blending in the seventh house, yourself and another person. Um, but
Mm.
remember that sun is going to rise again, and the darkness will come. So I also like the seventh house as almost this initiation into a part of the chart, the nighttime part of the chart, which is a lot more inactive and about reflection and about going deep within, because that top half of the chart, that day half of the chart, is really about like outward action. We're meeting people, we're exploring the world, and now we sort of settle into a more nighttime realm of the chart where we are not the captain of the ship necessarily, where we are deep down in the underworld. It's almost this entrance to the underworld in a way. Although you could also say that for the eighth house too.
And speaking of the sun, I find it fascinating when someone has their sun in the seventh house. I don't know if you
Mhm.
wanted to get into the planets being there yet,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Planets or
like
signs, sure. Yeah, in the
yeah,
seventh.
I mean like I feel like when somebody has like the sun there, or maybe it's Leo, but I feel more with the sun. It's like they have
Mm.
these qualities about them, like you mentioned. Like I feel like they can really make somebody around them feel very special in one-to-one relationships. They really,
Mm.
they really shine their light on that. They can really, if they focus on a person, the person that they're with feels like really special, really unique. But it's also interesting because it also is the planet. It's about the ego, so it's kind of like they need something. They will need some kind of recognition from the person that they're with while they're still, shining because whenever planets in the seventh house, I always like tell my clients like that planet, think of it as if it's in your first house. Like put it in the first house and like own up to that particular planet and then just let the seventh house work itself out. Otherwise, it can be kind of that needy planet. I feel it can be really like I need this from you. I'm gonna give this to you, but I also need it kind of energy.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, isn't it? This whole idea of needs and, what we're unable to provide ourselves and thus seek in others. So if you have the sun in the seventh house, it might be, hard to give yourself applause and hard to give yourself that sense of celebration and specialness. And it's much easier to give it to other people because maybe then they can give you the thing you can't give
Yeah,
yourself, right? Maybe then they'll give you
exactly.
the applause in
Exactly.
return. So
Exactly.
that is a great point to bring up about the seventh house as this place of exchange, of I'm going to give you a little and you're going to give me something in return. Once again,
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
back to that negotiation, that's sitting across the table. Both people are kind of polarized, but they can work together to create an even field for them to play on and then get playing and then get transforming and making themselves anew. Because that's what happens when we, go into these shadows of relationship and
Hmm.
really start, you know, getting to know others' needs and thus our own.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, great. So we've covered the seventh house pretty well, and really looked at issues of our one-to-one partnerships, the people we seek out who represent something in ourselves we're seeking. And sometimes this is a shadow, right? That we have sort of rejected or put out there on another and have trouble perhaps owning for ourselves. So the seventh house opposes the first house of self. So in an opposition, it's naturally going to be about the other. And what I find interesting about our next house, which is the eighth house, is that it opposes the second house. And the second house is about personal resources, finances. It's all the ways that we nourish ourselves and take care of ourselves. On our last podcast, 2 podcasts ago, we talked about how the second house is often to do with the way we were touched as children, the way we were fed and clothed as children, being that house that rises right after you are born. So there's something about the second house that's about like knowing, our innate needs, right? So what happens when you go to the opposite house, the eighth house? Well, guessed correctly, you're dealing with the needs of other people. You are entering this realm that is still relational, like the seventh house. You're still dealing with another person, but it's on this more intimate level where we're really now getting into the nitty-gritty of emotional patterning, of also family background and inheritances. What are the ways you share that, right? What are the ways you support one another financially, emotionally? And through this process of, I call the eighth house a place we really merge close with other people. Through this process of merging, it can bring out a lot of personal psychological challenges, in my opinion, because it's like when we get close to another person on that level, and we are sharing so much with them. We sort of start to enter this territory sometimes in the eighth house of codependence or of getting really overly reliant on somebody else. Think of the opposite to how you meet your own needs. Well, somebody else is meeting my needs, right? And then we can be left in the eighth house with this feeling of, oh man, I need this person, or I need this substance, or I need this situation to work out so that I feel secure and stable. And we can create all these limits for ourselves, thus, in the eighth house, where, we're unable to move, we're unable to be independent, we're unable to flourish. And
Hmm.
so it often takes us into this place where, if we go eighth to ninth house, it's this journey kind of upwards out of the underworld. And it's sort of saying, okay, I'm gonna find out really what's mine, and then I'm gonna go into the ninth house and I'm going to elaborate that and discover myself and discover spirituality and have this awakening. But the journey there is often through this really tricky process of merging and coming close and then having to kind of separate and become your own person again. The eighth house also in some ancient astrological texts referred to divorce or referred to sort of, what comes after the honeymoon phase of the seventh house. Well, it's, discussions about money, discussions about intimacy, psychological issues, and all of the matters that come up when you're in a close relationship. So I'll leave it there and let you add commentary if you would you would so
Yeah,
please.
use my deep real fast there. Yeah, right into the eighth house.
Right into the eighth house.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, very well said. And I feel like we talked about the 12th house before, and we were talking like the 12th house is
Mhm.
the house, where things go to disappear and it's a house of loss. But the eighth house is the house that I would consider the fear of loss. In the 12th house, you have to just surrender to the loss. But in the eighth house, there's this fear that comes up of losing. Because
Yeah.
if you really think about it, the moment that you merge or you share your resources with somebody, if you have to lose them, there's going to be so much that you have to change about yourself and your life. And that's kind of the divorce process as well.
Mm.
Um, Not saying that a lot of, people who have North Node in the eighth house have gone through a divorce, but that's kind of a thing. But that's what I see.
Mm.
But yeah, um, it's like what you get from the other, you get the good and the bad, right? When you really merge with another person. So it's like that house that comes after marriage, the eighth house. You get married in the seventh house, whatever is after marriage is the eighth house. So if the person, has a lot of money, you get their money. If they have a lot of, well, you don't get it, but you're sharing it. If they get some inheritance, you're probably going to get some of that. You get a taste of that, right? And that can do something with regards to your sense of self, your self-worth. and so on and so forth. But they can also come with other baggage, trauma and things they have to deal with. And that you also get that as well. But whatever it is that you're getting, it's very hard to feel like you have to lose it. And when you have to lose it, that fear of loss comes up. And that's where we get to the really deep psychology. The foundation of the psychology of the eighth house is, what do you do when you're about to lose something? What do you do when you're in a state of fear? That's the part that you will get to discover about yourself by fully merging with somebody else. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say with regards to that.
Yeah, that hits really deep what you said. And I think it brings into perspective once again that opposition to the second house, which is how you take care of yourself, how you meet your own needs, right? What is your personal bank account look like? What is your personal psychological journey look like, right? Because in the eighth house, there can be, I think, a lot of fear of being on your own again, right? We can get so entangled with the other that we can often lose ourselves in the eighth house. I have seen this plenty where
Yeah,
souls with a lot going on in the eighth house can
yeah,
really easily lose themselves in their relationships and not know how to be independent.
yeah,
Um, and that can I think accompany as well this feeling of yeah, there's this sort of guilt as well that can accompany what's going on in the eighth house because there can be feelings of debts. This is another thing that this house
yeah.
is traditionally known for, is we feel indebted to somebody else, somebody who's going through a really tough time. Our partner's in a really tough time. Oh my gosh, I have to look after them and affirm them and take care of them and nurture them through their addictive
Mm-hmm.
struggles or whatever it is. But
Mm-hmm.
that leaves no room for self-care. That just drags you into the madness of somebody else. And the reason you're getting dragged in is because you're afraid of what you would do on your own, of what you would do if you had to let go. So I really think what you said about that fear of loss is huge. And what I'll add to that as well is that in the ancient astrological scheme, the eighth house was technically making no aspect with the ascendant. So it's one of these houses that's considered like the 12th and also the 6th, which we'll talk about last. These houses don't make aspects to the first house. So they're seen as taking life away from the individual. They're seen as taking somebody out of themselves. And in the eighth house, I think we really see that clearly, where we kind of forget ourselves in the muck of relationship. And then we have to
Mm-hmm.
really find our way back,
Yeah.
which can feel very dark and it can feel very scary to do on our own.
Yeah, if I'm approaching it from, I guess this is not in traditional astrology, but maybe more modern astrology,
Hmm.
the eighth house would be considered to be inconjunct to the ascendant, making that inconjunct 150 degrees, as well
Mm,
as the sixth house. And inconjunctions are completely different. They're not even opposite. They're just like different from whatever it's in conjunct. So the eighth house is just like completely different from like the first house. It's not
yeah,
even opposite like the seventh. It's just like odd. It's just weird. It's just different.
right.
But like you mentioned, like these themes of the eighth house, we will have to deal with it eventually. And it'll kind of creep into our lives. It'll become like an itch that we can't scratch.
Hmm.
If we keep giving ourselves away, one day we're gonna have to take ourselves back. It's going to be annoying. And we're going to be like, well, I didn't realize that I had just lost that part of myself. And now oh man, I got to put myself back together. So it's like this um, part of yourself, whatever, if your planet's there, and especially if the planet's like in conjunct to the ascendant from the eighth house, if it's like making an exact, degrees in conjunction, these are
Hmm.
going to be planets that are going to annoy you in your life. And then you're going to have to take action on it. You're going to have to take responsibility for it. And that comes also with sixth house. It's like taking responsibility back to yourself, as we will talk about the sixth house there as well. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I think there's that part of it. I think a lot of taking back the responsibility or putting yourself back together, with the eighth house, it's very psychological and it does require, somatic therapy. And that's why therapy is also associated with eighth house. It can also
Yeah.
require more occult. work. That's why the occult is also associated with the eighth house. Like maybe you gotta put yourself back together, with a tarot reading or something like that. That's also um, can be a source of healing for that
Mm.
particular part of you. And also sex.
Ooh,
Sex could be a way of healing for, reclaiming yourself back for the eighth house as well. Okay, I
100%.
feel like you have
Well,
something to say there.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, when you brought up tarot, and then this is even the case with sexuality, we're dealing with transformation, right? So we're dealing from going in one state, which let's just say is sort of that muddled, I don't know, clump of a person that is here and isn't here after said relationship took place. And by the end, you want to turn yourself into a beautiful swan. Okay. Well, the eighth house is sort of that
Yeah.
that in between where you go
Yeah.
from the muddy mess of the relationship into this kind of individuated, beautiful swan. In order to do that, we
Hmm.
need to see, I don't know why I'm using a swan, but we need to see an image of what we want to become. Let's say it's the
Yeah.
swan. We see that in the tarot card. Sometimes we see that in another person. We
Yeah.
see that in a pile of money that we want to bring forward, right? What are all of these things? They're all symbols that we
Yeah.
are merging our consciousness with so that we can expand. I think that's what
Hmm.
the occult in many
Mm.
ways is that it
Mm.
is symbolic knowledge that
Hmm.
if we
Hmm.
focus, if we penetrate enough, we kind of gain
Hmm.
the power of it. The power in those symbols makes its way into us, and then we become more powerful as a result. And you could think about that in a
Yeah.
lot of different fields. I mean, not just the esoteric and the occult, but also, um, I don't know why I know this, but I do. Pretty sure Kim Kardashian has her North Node in the eighth house. I think Paris Hilton has a couple planets in the eighth house. Okay, where I'm going with this is
Okay.
these two women are multimillionaires, probably billionaires, if I'm not mistaken. There is an intense focus on getting that coin, on getting to the top. Both of these women also have, stories of trauma, stories of issues
Mm.
that they're trying to heal from and
Mm.
build back from. So there's something about the
Mm.
eighth house that can also be incredibly motivating in kind of
Mm.
lifting ourselves out of a place where we've been abused or put down by other people or made to feel
Mm.
powerless.
Mm.
It's a place we
Mm.
become hungry for our power again, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's done because of relationships. That's how powerful relationships can be
Oh my
for
gosh.
personal
Completely.
power.
And what I always find so, this is where astrology is so much like Mercury. It could go one way or the other. You can read an astrology chart and the houses going the diurnal rotation. So following the sun, in which case the sun would go from the eighth house to the seventh house to the sixth house. Or you can read the houses numerically from seven to eight to nine. And if we read it numerically, and we go seven, eight to nine, well, the ninth house is the house of God in religion, in the earlier traditions of astrology. It's considered the house of God, the house of discovery, the house of spirituality. So there's something about also God being in the ninth house, being towards the top of the chart. The eighth house is like somewhat reaching for that, somewhat wanting to become more of what it can be. It's just in the
Mm.
really tough part of the hero's journey where, we're slaying dragons, we're in the underworld, we're trying to come up for
Mm.
air. We haven't yet gotten that
Mm.
reward, we haven't yet gotten that recognition, but we're on our way. We're pushing up there. So there's also incredible resilience and I think motivation that can come out of eighth house planets
Mm.
and
Yeah.
transits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a house of definitely transformation. And in modern astrology, a lot of people associate the eighth house with Scorpio, which I think does make a lot of sense in the way that Scorpio can very similarly, have these intense feelings that it needs to transmute into some sort of business or creation or motivation. So it's all not just stuck inside. I think similarly in the eighth house, we got to get it out. We got to get the things others have done to us out of our system and into the world somehow. And sometimes we need a symbol to achieve that. We need a psychic reading to give us that push in individuating.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Mm.
Yeah. All right. Well, should we move on to the sixth house? Do you want to open us to the sixth house?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
So, okay. So the sixth house is another one of those houses that is in conjunct to the ascendant again. I'll
Yes.
start there. So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those houses where we don't see ourselves and we give up ourselves. Um, but I would look at the sixth house as the kind of relationships that we have with people where we give of ourselves because it's an obligation or because it serves a particular practical function.
Yep.
So that's why we have, for example, an employer and employee type of relationship will be included in the sixth house, or um, a relationship between like a nurse and a patient would be part of this because you have to do it for that person. If you don't, they're relying on you. It's a practical purpose that you have this kind of relationship. An employer and employee, there's a practical reason why the employer is being the master and the employee is sort of the working under because we have that type of I don't know the hierarchy. It's not that the word is not hierarchy. It's more of just service in one way or another. And sometimes we might think that um, the nurse is serving the patient, but actually the patient in their own way is serving the nurse back in return, giving the nurse that kind of ability to use their skills, their compassion to have that purpose also. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna add to that by saying the sixth house is a cadent house. We didn't really explore the angularity of the eighth, which is succeedent. Maybe we can come back to that. But the sixth house is cadent, which means falling away. So these are
Hmm.
the sort of relationships that take us out of our relationship, right? Your boss is calling you and asking you to stay late. Oh, sorry, honey, I can't be home until 8 o'clock tonight because I'm working overtime for my boss,
Ah, that's an interesting
or
approach. Yeah.
maybe you need an employee and you're starting a company. And so, you ask one of your old work friends to help you. It's those sorts of people who live in the sixth house, those sorts of people who are relationships that are um, perhaps who you are falling back on in a way to yeah, help you do something productive in the world and that take you out of your, I don't know, sort of preferred relationships. Let's just call it your platonic or even romantic relationships. These are the relationships that are more, as you said, around service and work. And yeah, the kind of relationships we have to maintain to survive in
Yeah.
society. You need
Yeah.
a nurse by your side when you're in the hospital, right? Like you
Yeah.
need these sorts of relationships around, not because you want them, but because you need them in some way.
Because life has to function with them, kind of. And also, how
Yes.
our pets are associated with the sixth house as well. And it's
Mm.
interesting because you know how people are kind of like, oh my God, I can't meet you today because something's gone happening with my cat or my dog. Gotta take them to the hospital because something happens. It's also still a relationship with the pet that takes us away from other relationships that maybe we'd like to be having on that day. But we gotta do it because our pets depend on us. Their whole lives are about us.
Yes. Something else, this is a bit of a darker manifestation. I always like to bring up the darker manifestation of things. But in the sixth house, I have seen, okay, especially if like the sun is there or a core facet of the identity is there, somebody who is a caretaker to
Yeah.
other people, somebody who rushes to aid, somebody who's in crisis
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
is a very responsible person in another person's life. So once again, there's that kind of quality of always being the person others can fall back on, or you yourself, like if you have Venus in the sixth house or something, you might be falling back on a certain relationship to catch you time and time again when shit gets hard. Because cadent houses can be the hard things and the hard things that pull us out of life. So in this case,
Yeah.
it's like what in your relationships can be hard that then either you have to attend to or that your um, perhaps even creating in your relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you actually we didn't talk about this in the eighth house, but the eighth house also rules crisis, because you just mentioned that.
Hmm.
But the difference between the
Hmm.
crisis of the sixth and the eighth, because the eighth is also gonna pull you, somebody's life and death situation, but the sixth house is more routine crisis. Like you're caretaking someone, and obviously they have a sickness. So at this particular time of day, they've got to be taking their medicine, and you've got to be there as a routine to caretake them. And if you don't, then it's a crisis. That's kind of how the sixth house crisis would kind of work, as opposed to eighth house, which is like unpredictable. It's out of the blue. It's not a routine. It just
Yep.
something just happens, and you have to be there for that person. But with the sixth house, it's more, yeah, it's like a routine kind of caretaking crisis situation. And
Mm.
yeah, I have
Would
noticed, like, especially sun in the sixth house can be a father figure that they're actually caretaking. That's actually a thing that I've noticed. Moon can be the mother, and so on and so forth.
Yes, yes. And the sixth house does rule health challenges. I mean, I was thinking about, or just health in general. I was thinking about, though, how every house in the chart could have something to do with health, right? There's spiritual health,
Mm.
and there's
Yeah, yeah.
emotional health, and there's all these different types of health we're experiencing. Well, the sixth house, speaks to health more broadly. I also think it specifically can be health related problems to our relationships, right? So, like, if you are
Mm.
burdened with the care of somebody else, um,
Mm.
what kind of the effects on you that has, or what is your relationship with work-life balance is another huge sixth
Mm.
house and 12th house topic, right? It's like the sixth
Oh,
house
yeah.
is your work, it is your day to day, it is who you're supporting, what team you're working within, what your routines are. And the 12th house is where you sort of go to take a vacation from all of that, from all the stress of work and daily life and taking care of people. It's where you kind of escape into your own imagination. So there's this also really stark reality check about the sixth house, being in
That's
opposition to the
true.
12th. It's like, here's what's happening, we have to deal with it. Versus like the
Yeah.
12th house can sort of be like, well, I'll deal with it later, like I'm over here chilling in, the Akashic records. Like I'm good.
Yeah, yeah.
Reality can wait. But the sixth house is sort of like, no, like there is a situation in my life calling for my attention, and maybe it's more of an emergency because it's in the sector of relationships. It's the people right around us who are needing things, right? It's the people who are direly in need of our support. I'll share a personal example with the sixth house. So I only have one placement here, but I have the south node in the sixth house, which, in astrology can speak to your past conditioning, past karma. Some say your past lives. And I used to be a very busy bee. I mean, I'm still a busy bee, but back then I was like growing up, always saw myself as very responsible and needing to take care of people and always wanting to be in service and be the fix it person, right? Like I was always kind of the fix it person. I get in there and I get a good job done and I fix it. So, there could also be in the sixth house this identification with fixing it for other people or making it better or sacrificing ourselves is another huge
Yeah.
part of the sixth
Yeah.
house because, we don't feel worthy. The sixth house being under the seventh house. Well, I'm under somebody else. I'm under somebody else and I am maybe perhaps in their shadow or I am working behind the scenes to help them feel better, help them look good. But it's not necessarily like I'm getting credit for it, right? Like I'm just the care or the support. And it can be thankless work when you're in that type of mode of service. It's like you're just providing because you need to. And I think that sometimes this can stem from a bit of low self-worth, low self-esteem. I mean, that could be in any part of the chart, but the sixth house specifically manifesting through overworking, through overcompensating, through going like above and beyond for other people to do a really good job. Um,
Mm.
when, that's not always required of you. You can rest and you can just, be kind to yourself.
Yeah, I think because it's opposite to the 12th house, which the 12th house has that very, Piscean quality to it. I think a lot of the need to overwork from the sixth house could actually stem from guilt. I think there's a lot of that because,
I was gonna
Pisces is kind
say,
of that sign that's just like, I need to save people, otherwise I'm gonna feel bad about myself. And so we have that Virgo sixth house energy where that's kind of like, I don't want to be the person that makes that person, feel bad because then I'm gonna feel bad, and then so it's kind of like this like martyr situation that happens, the savior kind of energy. So I'm sensing a little bit more like it's coming from that guilt, that shame kind of energy, and so yeah, there's a relationship with redefining service with the sixth house. What does service actually mean? If so, okay, it's very obvious if you want to interpret as you're cleaning someone's bathroom and that's service, but like what if you're
hmm
just singing? Is that not service? There's also that
hmm
philosophical question. I mean, what is service, right? You can
right,
physically
right.
serve, you can spiritually serve, you can emotionally serve, you can creatively serve. There's different forms of service.
And I think once again, coming back to the seventh house as our main angle for tonight, ooh, it has something to do, that question, with where we see something as being outside of ourselves and
Mm,
where we're having to earn it or work hard for it, because we don't intrinsically feel we have it. And I think
mm,
that that is a theme that really weaves these three houses together,
mm.
is feeling as though we don't have all that we need. And we don't, right? We have to
No, we don't. Yeah,
we have to be in relationship.
exactly.
We have
Exactly.
to gain from others. We have to be supported. We have to be touched and felt. We have to give, right?
Yeah.
But there is something about that motivation. Like if you have a lot of planets going on here, then it may be your work, right? To kind of disentangle from
Yeah.
conditioned ways of relating or serving or
Yeah.
being in an engagement with another, and really remembering,
Yeah.
what also belongs to you, which I think these houses can
Yeah.
help us figure out, right? It's like in the sixth house we understand maybe what is our divine service. Our seventh house, we
Yeah.
figure out what is our divine lesson in relationships. The eighth
Mm,
house, how can I use all of this to transform and to be stronger in
mm,
myself?
mm.
But all along, we're kind of filling in the blanks with ourselves. Well,
Yeah.
I don't really have
Yeah.
this yet. How can they teach me or, expand me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think there's a boundary lesson with all these three houses as well. It's like
Yeah.
you don't want to have a big, massive castle wall in front of you where you just shut off from all the people because then you're never growing and evolving, but you don't want to have absolutely no walls where people can just step over you and then you lose a sense of who you are because you always have a first house and you always have an ascendant, so you always have yourself. So it's really this like kind of
Mm,
um, how much do I give? How much do I take? When do I start? When do I stop? It's this beautiful dance.
right. Right. And that's really interesting too, just to think about for anybody listening, what is your ascendant sign? And then what are the signs on these three house cusps, the sixth, the seventh, and the eighth? How do these zodiacs who are placed here make you feel? What
I
immediately
love
comes to
that.
mind when this archetype
Yeah.
is described? Does it make you uncomfortable? Does it make you feel romantic? Does it make you feel resentful and pissed off and ew, I never want to be that? Like it's really important to kind of study and engage with these opposites, because whatever takes up those three houses is your personal opposite, and so
Yeah.
as you said, that can be the source of a lot of shadow, and of a lot of getting deeper into ourselves, and doing so through a relational prism.
Yes. Beautiful. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. Well,
Actually, we
any
didn't mention one
yeah,
thing. Sorry, I just wanted to
yeah, oh,
add. We
go
forgot to
go.
talk about how like the eighth house actually also rules our in-laws. I think that's an important part of
Oh,
the relationship we make in
true.
eighth house. It's what comes after the marriage, and that's always an interesting kind of
Yes.
relationship.
Yes, absolutely. And I was also going to add on the eighth house too, because we talked about cadency with the sixth house and sort of things that take us out of the life energy. The succeedant houses are about supporting the angle. So also the
Ah,
eighth house can be very supportive to the seventh
yeah,
house. If we go
yeah.
to couples counseling, that's supporting the relationship. If we, share or invest together. That supports the relationship. Um,
Exactly. The
if
in-laws can support your
the
relationship.
in-laws, and also if we take the eighth house as transformation, well, what is better to support a relationship than two people becoming who they're actually meant to be through doing that
Exactly.
hard work on their own soul?
What's better to support a relationship than two people who are not afraid to let each other go?
Mm,
Because the
yes.
most damaging thing you can have in a relationship is clinging so tightly and being so afraid to let the other
Ooh.
person have their have their life, right? When you
Mm,
love a bird, you let it fly free and it'll come back to you and you don't want to cage it.
that is so
And
gorgeously
we go to the
said.
ninth house and the bird flies to the ninth
Yes,
house.
exactly. And then the sixth house is really interesting when we apply this analogy too, because I mean, maybe you could even say something like when
Ooh.
you because sixth house is taking away from that angle. So when you um I don't know, give a lot, serve a lot, pour a lot of yourself into someone. It can maybe be too much, or maybe you might not
Yeah.
see that somebody's actually not right for you because you're trying to earn their love or
Yeah.
earn their trust, or there's something there
Mm.
about also relationships and having fallouts because maybe um we were we were putting somebody else above us. I do see this a lot in the sixth house where there can be also hierarchical thinking. I mean, even just think about work in terms of that, right? Like at work, we're at work in the sixth house. You have your boss, you have your employees, you have all these different levels, and you might be like ranking yourself on a certain level, right? And you could be putting someone
Yeah.
above you or beneath you. So there's also this
Yeah.
issue of like, where am I on the social scale?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe thinking too low of yourself, thinking like, oh, I belong down here, everybody else belongs up here. But actually, how can you rise back up to equality in the seventh house and not stay stuck down in the sixth where you're just, okay, well, I'll just take, the breadcrumbs. It's like, no, like shoot for the stars, ask for what you want. Because I also think the sixth house, there can be that inability to ask for what we're really worth or kind of have that confidence in relationship because we're really like, oh,
Yeah.
they have more, or I guess it could also
Yeah.
be I have more, but
Yeah.
I see the sixth house more as a bit like connected to Virgo in that way. Just very humble. I'll just do my job. I'll just do my work, and I'm not special.
Guilt.
Guilt, exactly. Once again, guilt because my power lies outside of me. My power lies in you know
Yeah.
in somebody who's above me.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting about the 12th is like the 12th is where we discover like the whole universe kind of is inside of us and outside of us and weaving through
Yeah.
everything. So the sixth house also highlights that of like um, learning how to be a part of this world without falling for the illusion of hierarchy and where we're separate, where we're more or less.
Yeah, I mean, because if you really think about it, like I love how this the six house rules pets because when you think about it, who is actually serving who? Like we might think that we have to give our dog, our cat some food, we have to give them a shower, and so on and so forth. But they are probably thinking that they're actually serving us. They're doing what we require. They're fetching the stick. So there, it's never really one side thing. It's like I gotta bring this up, but it's like S&M. It's like who's actually the master, who's actually the slave. The person who's
Right,
actually the master is a slave to the slave. It's kind of like
right.
that, interesting paradox.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Oh my gosh, and I do love pets in the sixth house. I think that's such a funny signification. Like little guys that you look after, but that also look after you. Like there's this like
Yeah,
mutual
I mean, exactly.
mutual love there. And then what the 12th house is big animals, so animals who like trample you and eat you or
Your
or
invisible friends,
yeah,
your
wild,
invisible
wild
creatures.
animals, animals that are unseen, that you
Yeah,
don't see coming.
unicorns or something.
That you can't manage. Like they're just there. But the sixth house, where there's a lot more management. Like we're like managing our little pets, and somehow our pets kind of
Yeah,
manage us. Yeah.
yeah, that's so
So we've
cute. Yeah.
yeah, so we've really gone through these two houses. We've talked a lot about giving and receiving, and through the receiving, understanding our shadow and our self more. And I really wasn't expecting today. I always love to be surprised by each call and just how much I learned today about these houses and shadow. I always think of shadow as like the 12th house or, the fourth house or
Yeah, I
maybe
guess
the
there's
eighth
different
house
ways of interpreting the
of
shadow. Yeah.
interpreting the shadow. But even just that seventh house time of day when the sun is going underneath the surface,
Yeah.
it's casting a
Yeah.
lot of shadows because light is
Yeah.
is minimizing. So light being self, being soul energy, as that minimizes, we have to get much more comfortable in these nuances of the other. And I think in
Mm-hmm.
all of these
Mm-hmm.
houses, we're kind of trying to acclimate to the people who are around us and strike this healthy balance of who am I innately and who do I need to become
Mm.
to actualize more of what's inside of
Mm.
me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Tan. Is there any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with your audience, with this audience, especially if they have planets in these three houses?
Ooh.
Like a lot of planets, like it's every planet is in the sixth, seventh, and eighth. Talk to that person.
Go on a vacation. But you're no really like
Take some you
go on a
time.
solo trip. Go on a solo trip because they're probably gonna be like finding someone to go with them. But like go on a
Yes.
solo trip.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
No, but yeah, I to spend some time with yourself, I would say, and because
Yeah.
you all need a bit of balance, spend some time in self-care, um, make your own money, and
Mm,
yeah, and just work on yourself. Put more energy into yourself. Because if there's so much energy in relationships, we need to take some of that back. Otherwise, we have a table and it's got three legs. Well, it's got maybe one leg and something's missing. So it's like a table that just can't be balanced. So we gotta give it balance to the other
mm.
self-focused houses. So the triad of the self.
Yeah, go watch our video on the triad of the self, where we talk about houses 12, 1, and 2 if you have a lot of planets in 6, 7, 8. Yeah, yeah. I was also gonna say, and this sounds really cliche, I want to say, but also like with these um placements, trust your feelings, trust your gut, and trust who people are when they show themselves to you. I think there can be a
Mm,
lot of excuse making, there can be a lot of
mm,
sweeping up for other people here. And the question there is like, is this you not um wanting to realize this in yourself? If you're always affirming somebody else, is that still keeping it out of you, right? So if you're affirming somebody
mm,
who's really, let's just say like an egomaniac is your
mm.
partner, it's like,
Yeah,
well, I'm doing that because I'm so afraid that to inhabit my own ego would make me like them, right? Or, oh gosh,
yeah,
to go my own way in this situation would mean I'm becoming the very thing I don't like. So I think there is fear on that level, but it's about really also remembering that yeah, you are your own person and that also this person might reflect back things to you that like I think we do this too much in spiritual communities where we say, "Oh, the person you're in a relationship with who is potentially abusive is a mirror to you." I'm like, I don't think that's always true. I'm like, I don't think that people are always our mirrors. Like some people just end up in genuinely difficult situations with other people. And I think the real challenge is where do you find yourself in that? How do you take care of yourself? And where do you
Yeah,
disband and also not become too identified with other people's character defects, with other people's problems, with just this whole
yeah,
world of all the people you'll meet and
yeah,
all the places you'll go. How do you
yeah,
go to those places without losing yourself, but also without completely cutting yourself off to transformation and change through them?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think there is a there's value in being in a relationship where the other person is your shadow, but
Yes.
you don't want to always be there. You want to learn from it. And I think
Mm,
that's where we kind of want to have some perspective here. Is that never in a relationship where you see the darkness and the shadow in the other, then maybe you're kind of avoiding something and you're not probably not growing and evolving because we don't live alone in the world and we're not going to grow and evolve
Yep.
if we don't go through the darkness and shit. But then if you're always in it, then we have
Yep.
a problem because then you're not actually learning. Because if you do, and if you incorporate your shadow into yourself and so on and so forth, then the universe says, okay, let's move on. Let's do something else with your life. You've learned this lesson.
Yep.
So I think there's a discernment that we also need to have with regards to that.
Very, very well said. Yes, absolutely. Well, it has been a
Honest truth.
pleasure
But yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's an honest truth. And it's been a pleasure having a relationship with you, my dear, today on this
Oh
podcast.
yes, in our seventh house. I don't know what
We've
podcast, I
had we've
guess.
had I hope we've had equal sharing time. I think we have.
I hope it's seventh house and
I
not to
think we've
sixth house or not to eighth
yeah.
house.
We've gotten psychologically pretty deep in the eighth. We've showed
Yeah,
up for
yeah,
work and creating
yeah,
a beautiful podcast in the sixth, and we've
yeah.
enjoyed
The
each other's
practical
company in the
stuff.
seventh.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've really exercised all three relationship
Yeah,
sectors
we
tonight.
enjoyed the sunset together. Yeah.
We did, yes, exactly. Yes, sun is setting for me here, and what rising for you over there. Now it's risen, but
No, it's midday.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Oh,
starting
and we're
now.
hot and cold too. So you
And you're in
are,
the winter or
I'm in the
something.
winter in my sweater, and you're in the
I
summer,
can
and
see
you're,
that. I just want to take all this off now. It's getting more and more
yes,
heated in the day.
I know, I
Ugh,
know.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, please mention the ways, Tam, that people can find you and your astrology services
Okay.
online, and also where they can check
Yes.
out this new art account and how they can stay in
Yes.
touch for prints because you really create some stellar
Yes.
work.
Yes. Yes. So my main website is houseofthewildwitch.com. So there you can find both my artwork and also get astrology readings. And of course, if you are only interested in astrology, then you can head over to my YouTube channel. There's lots of educational videos there. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Tan Astrology on YouTube. Did I mention that? Not yet. Yeah, Tan
Yeah.
Astrology.
Beautiful, beautiful. And as always, I'm available for consultations, ethan-paisley.com. And you can find all my social links there as well. And definitely subscribe for more of this podcast and like it, comment, share it, express it, and it helps us do more episodes. So hope this was an enjoyable, eye-opening experience to the relationship with others, but most importantly, the relationship with your own soul journey. So thank you guys so much for being
Yes.
here.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, see you next time. Bye.
Bye.